Hello everyone, and welcome to the Plant Reproduction series. In this video, we'll be covering a question from the KZN March 2026 Provincial Test. This is a very big question. It is worth 14 marks, so let's get into it. Question 2.2 tells us that we have a diagram showing the adaptations of flowers that have different pollinators. So we have flower A and we have flower B. Now I'd like you to pause the video here, answer the questions. Thereafter, we will go through the answers. Question 2.2.1 asks you to identify the pollinating agent X. So the pollinating agent, we can see that it is a bird. So that's worth 1 mark. 2.2.2 list 2 general characteristics of the division to which the above flowers belong. So, first of all, we have to ask ourselves, what is the division that these flowers belong to? The word flower actually gives it away and tells us that these are angiosperms. So, what do we know about angiosperms or flowering plants? We know that they have true roots, true stem, and true leaves. We know that the leaves are covered with a cuticle to prevent water loss. We know that they have vascular tissue such as xylem and phloem. And we know that they produce seeds. We also know that water is not required for fertilization. On the note of them producing seeds, it's important to note that the seed produced by an angiosperm is always covered by a flower. That is what makes them angiosperms. Remember, the prefix angio means vessel or something that is enclosed, and the prefix gymno means naked, which is why gymnosperms have a naked seed and angiosperms have an enclosed seed. 2.2.3 describe the role of part Y in the reproduction of plants. So part Y produces and stores pollen grains. It contains the male gametes and it is essential for fertilization. Question 2.2.4 asks you to tabulate 2 differences in petals of flower A and flower B. So we know that flower A is pollinated by a bird. In this particular question, we know that it's bird pollinated because we can see that there is a bird. But in other questions, you might not be given the image of the bird. You'll have to decipher what kind of pollination agent it uses by looking at the shape of the flower. So if the flower is quite tube-shaped or narrow, then we know that it is bird pollinated because the tube is large enough for the bird to fit its beak and reach for that sweet nectar. However, if it has very large, colorful petals, we know that it is insect pollinated because the large colors or the large colored petals will attract a pollinator. So, when we draw tables, there are certain things that we must have. Firstly, the first mark that you get is for drawing a table, for having a heading, and also for labeling each column. So your heading will be table showing differences in petals of flower A and flower B. For each column, you will say bird pollinated or wind pollinated. So each column must also have its own heading. And those 3 things are all worth 1 mark. So remember to have your table, remember to label each column, and remember to have a heading for your table. When you start to list the differences, make sure that the differences that you are listing all match each other. So for example, you can't say under bird pollinated that the leaves, the petals have a sweet scent, and then on the other side write that the petals are small. The differences that you write must match each other. So bird pollinated plants have got large petals. Wind pollinated plants have small petals. Bird pollinated plants have got a sweet scent. Wind pollinated plants do not have a scent. Bird-pollinated flowers have brightly colored petals. Wind-pollinated flowers do not have brightly colored petals, and they tend to be dull. So make sure that each difference that you list actually matches to the one on the other side of the table. 2.2.5 asks you to explain how part Z is structurally suited for its function. So, part Z has a long feather-like stigma. Remember, the stigma is part of the female reproductive organ, and it is basically the surface onto which the pollen containing the male gamete lands. So in order to capture the maximum amount of pollen, this stigma has to be large. It also has to be sticky. So we can say that it is feather-like, it has a large surface area, and this allows it to easily trap the pollen grain. So this question is worth 14 marks. I'd like you to mark how many questions you got right, and then give yourself a mark out of 14. Then we can move on to question 2. Thank you very much.